your students are constantly calling out, wandering around the room, and disrupting class, you don't need a stricter rule. You need this one shift. It's simple, it works for any grade, and it can change your classroom tomorrow. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel. I'm a K-12 behavior specialist, and I help teachers manage the problem behaviors in their classroom by giving them real solutions that work for real classrooms. I think the one thing about me is I'm someone who has real world experience working with problem behaviors in the classroom. I have struggled just the same as you. I'm assuming you struggle because you're here at this video. But I really had a difficult class my first year of teaching. I had a group of junior high students. I took over in the middle of a year for a teacher who had to leave, and there hadn't been any structure set up in the classroom, and the kids were used to kind of doing whatever they wanted to do. And then I came in and was applying all the things that I had learned in school about teaching, and I was really thinking that I was doing all the right things by setting up the rules and the routines, but I was missing a really important component, and that was the relationship aspect and the community involvement aspect in my classroom. And I really struggled with the class and getting where we needed to be so that we could learn and that I wasn't feeling stressed out. I tried all the gimmicks, I tried the treats, I tried the rewards, but really the fact of the matter was I was still struggling because the kids didn't trust me, and I was struggling to really get to know them. And once I decided that we needed to make a shift is when I saw the biggest change. I'm going to share with you some of the strategies that I did that really turned things around in that classroom that I applied to every other classroom I taught from that point forward and have expanded on, and things that I share with the teachers I work with, and things that I've seen in classrooms that are extremely successful. And I want to share all of these tips with you so that hopefully this can help guide you if you are in the same boat and you feel like your classroom needs to make a shift. So teacher prep school did not do me wrong. I was right in the sense that I needed clear procedures and routines. That is incredibly important. And that is one thing that I dived in on, and I think it was my saving grace. But I think it would have been way worse if I hadn't had that. I think it would have been absolute chaos. But it is really important to remember that you want to have clear, consistent routines and procedures. That is a visual schedule. The students know what to expect. If you're working with secondary, that's an agenda on the board. That's when you have them break off into groups. You have expectations that you review, and they're on the board for the students prior to the groups. You have those visuals, you have those routines. Kids know what to expect. We had children from all walks of life walk into our classroom, and some come from very chaotic home lives, some come from very structured home lives. But at the end of the day, every single student, no matter what background they come from, benefits from knowing what's going to happen and what comes next. That eases their anxiety. It also eases your anxiety, and when we're calm as teachers, our classrooms are calm. And so we need to do these things and have a little bit of that organization ahead of time to help save us from being stressed. So some of my favorite things to use that I've always used are daily slides and visual schedules of what we're going to do. This works for all students, not just students with disabilities. Every single kid benefits from this. We work with a generation of kids that aren't exactly listeners. They are not auditory learners. They are visual. They are on all their devices. They are looking at things. That's how we can get to them. And the more that we use different strategies that engage all of their senses, the more likely we are to engage their attention. So if we're doing things like having the visual and the auditory cues, we are much more likely to have our students know where they need to be. We are all human. I've had moments where I have sat in a PD and I've been sitting there for a while and it's been a long day, and the presenter will tell us what we're going to do or ask a question and my mind has wandered. It's always very beneficial if they have something up there that I can read. That way I don't have to just not answer or, ask someone next to me because I can see it right in front of me. And then you don't have to be frustrated by constantly repeating yourself. I also like to have a consistent start to the classroom, whatever activity you do. Bell ringers are incredibly important important. They don't need to be anything like over the top. The kids just need to have something when they walk into the room that gets their brain switching from hanging out with the friends and walking and transitioning to the classroom and leaving their other class and coming to yours. They need to have something that gets their brains warmed up, but it's easy and not stressful, like writing in a journal or doing a review packet or something like that, or even a question of the day. Those are all super wonderful ways to get your class started. I also find it's really helpful to keep a timer on the board, especially for doing certain activities. So if we're doing our morning work or a bell ring when they come in, I have a timer set. They know that they have 5 to 6 minutes or whatever that we use, and I put the timer up there so they know how much time they have. Sometimes kids will procrastinate and become time blind, and then they'll start not doing what they need to do or playing around. But if they know that they are held accountable when that timer goes off, that you're going to ask to see what they did or you're going to ask them about what they did, that really does help. I have found that timers are an absolute game changer, not even just in the elementary classroom, but they are beneficial in the secondary classroom. They're beneficial when working with adults. We all like to know how much time we have before we're moving to the next thing. Build relationships first. I talk about this all the time because it is incredibly important to take that time to get to know your students and for your students to trust you and know you. A lot of the time, these kids need that. They need to know that you are a consistent adult who's fair. That's extremely important. When I say build relationships, I'm not saying that you are a doormat teacher who lets the kids do whatever they want and play on their Chromebooks all day. Let's be honest, we're more likely to work for a boss that we feel like likes us. And the same thing is for kids. If they feel like their teacher likes them, they are more willing to work for them. They are more willing to behave for them. They are more willing to encourage their friends to do the same thing because they think that you're a cool person and they want to back you up. And like I said, kids are no different than adults. We feel the same way. If you've ever had a boss that you didn't respect, that you felt like just barked at people and didn't hear people and barely knew your name and barely took interest in you, you really weren't going to go the extra mile for them. But if you had a boss who spent a lot of time trying to get to know you, remembered your name, greeted you and smiled at you every time they saw you in the hallway, maybe stuck little notes in your box letting you know that you were doing a great job, you are more likely to want to work for them. So let's just think about those things that, kids, a lot of the things that are motivating for us as adults are still motivating for kids as well. And having that connection, that relationship is so incredibly important. If your students are restless or off task, it may not be that they're actively trying to be defiant. It may need that they just need a change in task. They need to get up and move their bodies because they can only attend for so long. There's been a huge shift in education where it's all work, like little worker bees, where they sit all day long, and that is not developmentally appropriate for students. And it's important to remember this even carries into middle school and high school. They still have a lot of energy. They still need to get up and move. I will be honest, back to when we have to do PD, and I really do think one of the reasons they make us do PD is so that we do remember these things. Students need the opportunities to switch gears, not only mentally, but like physically. And one of my favorite things to do if I just want to have simple movement in the classroom is I'll have kids stand when they finish their work. Like I'll say, hey, we're going to write this sentence down or answer this question. When you're done, you're going to stand so I know that you're ready. Or instead of having kids raise their hand, I may have them stand if they know the answer. Those are some simple ways just to get some movement in the day for the kids. And they sometimes appreciate that. Some of them don't want to participate, and that's okay. We never force anybody to do anything, but they know they have that option if that is something that they want to do. And that is something that will help them. I think it's really important, especially if you're working with younger students, to break like your lesson sessions into 10 to 15 minute segments. This works for middle school as well, and honestly it's not going to hurt high school, where they work for 10 to 15 minutes and they get the opportunity to get a movement break or do something that is different from what they were doing before. This will really help with keeping them engaged. Layer in the positive reinforcement. We often correct more than we praise as educators, and that's because you're trying to teach and you're trying to get through a lesson and you're trying to do a good job, and then you may have this kid that's doing a behavior, and that behavior is disrupting what you're trying to do, which is making you frustrated, and then your anxiety builds, and then all you kind of start to see is the behavior. I think it's really important to try to focus on the positive, making sure that we are praising more than we are correcting, especially in the beginning, because once again, if you're letting the kids know that they're doing something right, you like what they're doing, you are more likely to see that. If you spend more of your time focusing on what needs to be be fixed, you're more likely to see them feel like you're critical and that they can't do anything right, and then things start to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You could have another teacher observe you if you want to do that. Maybe you could take mental notes yourself, but just kind of think about how you can show appreciation to your students, how you can give them that praise. I love the little positive notes that you can hide on their desk, or that, they can find that you say that they did something really good. The positive phone calls always help. Even sometimes just like a high five on their way out the door, like, hey buddy, I really loved your participation in class today. You did such a great job. That means a lot. They may look at you and be like, because sometimes, it's hard to take a compliment, but trust me, that sticks with them and they do appreciate it. I have worked with students who have said that I know this teacher doesn't like me and they never say anything nice to me and all they ever do is tell me what I'm doing wrong. I have heard that come from students, and they have said that's why they don't want to be in so-and-so's classroom, because everything is negative and they're always coming for them. Now I know sometimes kids exaggerate things because they don't want to be in class, but this is important to remember because that same student was also in another teacher's class who wasn't letting them play all day, but was making sure that they were focusing on the positive and the relationship aspect, and I never had that student leave that class. So I really do think it was the relationship that student had with that teacher, and the fact that teacher really did focus more on the positive. And also when the teacher had to give correction, the students received it better. All right, if you notice that you have an attention-seeking student, a student that's always wanting your attention or others' attention, find ways to address that need before it becomes a problem behavior. So if you have some students that just require more attention from the adult, meet that need, make that extra time to connect with them. I want you to connect with all your students, but there's some students who don't necessarily need as much check-in. Maybe they're a little bit more introverted, they aren't seeking your attention as much. And then there's some that really, really need that, and make sure that they get that positive attention up front load that positive attention. That can really help mitigate some of those attention-seeking behaviors in the classroom. Also, allowing these students to have an opportunity to do things in the classroom as leaders. This really helps if you have a student who seeks a lot of peer attention. So if you have a kid that maybe is always getting up and walking around and talking to their friends, let's switch gears a little bit and maybe assign the student the role of paper passer outer or something like that, or someone who hands out the materials. That way they're still kind of getting their attention, but they're doing what they need to do. And you're allowing them to have that behavior that they're seeking, and we're framing it in a much more positive way that works in our classroom. And on top of it, it kind of makes the student feel special because you did give them a special job. Additionally, you can use it as leverage if they don't want to follow the rules correctly, that they won't get the opportunity to do it again. But hopefully you won't have to go in that direction because you did give them the opportunity. You gave them that chance to have that role and prove themselves. Sometimes if I have students who seek a lot of attention, I may just swing by their desk and have a little 30-second chat with them about something non-academic and allow them to be able to meet that need with having that conversation piece. And that's what they're looking for. A lot of times attention seeking isn't about making you miserable. It's about seeking connection. And we don't know what the child's home life looks like or if they get a lot of attention from adults in their life. So those little connections, they're just small moments of the day, but they do mean a lot to the students. If you have a really particularly challenging student, it's important to look for the good. I know that is much easier said than done, but I have a little story to share with you. When I was teaching in the classroom, I had a student who was incredibly difficult, and I felt like I was not reaching this student, and we were having major behaviors every single day. And I was feeling really frustrated, and I was really thinking we needed to look at a different placement for this child. And things were just not, we were in a teacher shortage, and we'll be real, everybody was very honest with me that they didn't know how soon any kind of change like that was going to happen, and all of those things. And I was starting to see the writing on the wall as we were edging closer and closer to Christmas that this was not going to happen, that this student and I were going to be together the rest of the year, and I was going to have to figure out how to make this work. And I decided to look inward and realize that maybe I was coming in with dread with that student. Every time they got off the bus and came towards my classroom, I had a tightness in my chest. And I really was thinking, I think the student might be able to sense this. So I started to try to look for the good, even small things with this child, and notice that. And then, of course, I was making sure that I was praising them and giving attention for those sorts of things. But what was really interesting is I noticed that this student really liked a set of Dogman books in my classroom, and that this student was always reading these Dogman books. And at Christmas time, I got all of my students, it was a self-contained classroom, so I didn't have a lot of kids, all right? But I got all of my students gifts, and I took some of those Dogman books and I gifted them to that student. And they were used books from my classroom. And you would have thought that I gave him a trip to Disney with the way that he responded to those gifts. And it really changed our relationship because he realized I saw him. I had taken notice that every time he had free time, he would look at those books and want to read those books. And it was something that he really enjoyed. And I don't think he'd ever in his educational career had a teacher give him a gift, especially a gift that was meaningful and different and meant just for him. And it meant a lot. And after I gave him the gift, he came back the next day, right before we went on Christmas break, and he gave me a little gift, and it was the cutest thing ever. And before I even opened it, he let me know that it was socks, and he said it with his little lisp, and it was the most precious thing. And we had a moment where we just really connected. In the rest of the year, I'm not saying it was perfect. We still had some hiccups here and there. So much easier to redirect him and to have those conversations about his behavior and the change and the things that he needed to improve. One thing I did in my classroom when kids would have a big behavior is we would do reflection sheets. And prior to me taking that time to get to know him, it was kind of a waste of energy. It was a lot of fighting back and forth when we would do the reflection sheets. He just wanted to argue with me. But after, we had built that relationship, he would have real meaningful discussions with me, and he would really want to try and make the improvements to do better in the class. And not only that, his grades improved, his behavior improved, and he was able to fully mainstream out of the classroom, which was a huge deal because we'd started off the beginning of the year and I didn't think we were going to get there, but the student was able to do that. And I just think that that is the power of building those connections. So hopefully some of these strategies resonated with you and you feel like there's something that you can apply to your classroom, even in a small way. I really want to challenge you to try this tomorrow, just little steps, and see how things work for you and if you see any kind of improvement. I promise you, you will. Now, some things don't happen overnight. Behavior change does take time, and that is important to remember. Making that shift within ourselves really does help make that shift within our classroom. And putting these routines and these procedures in place not only helps our students, but it helps bring calm to us. And once again, when we have calm, we're able to share that with our students and we have a calmer classroom. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Share it to anybody, leave a comment, let me know what your favorite tip was, or if you have a tip you'd like to add. I really appreciate you doing that and helping build my community. Thank you so much, and I will catch you in the next video.